iFILM, London. iFILM, London.
This is Kugan Cassius for iFILM London. We're at the MATCHROOM headquarters today in Brentwood. With me I've got promoter Eddie Hearn. Looking very casual today, Eddie.
Yeah, you shocked me last night. You gave me a little call and got nothing planned today, just in the office, grafting away. Had a little run this morning, Coog, actually, you know. So feeling good, ready for Christmas. Been a long year, but lots of planning to do for 2013. So
obviously, I mean, MATCHROOM Sports has had a very, very good year with all your fighters. I mean, I'm going to start with Froch, your IBF super middleweight champion. He's had 2 fights this year. Would you have liked to have got him out maybe a 3rd time this year?
You know, I'm a big proprietor for boxing as often as possible, particularly when you're learning all the time and coming through the ranks. At that level, it's difficult to fit 3 in. I mean, actually, if you look at, he boxed Andre Ward in December last year, he boxed Butte in March, and he boxed Mac in November. So actually, he had 3 fights in that year period. But generally, in a calendar year, they'll fight 2 times. 3 is quite difficult. And again, we're planning next year for him to box probably in May, and then again in November. So, you know, it's difficult, and something you learn, even I learn, you know, being around fighters and then being involved with their camps, is it's not the fights, it's the camps. You know, so a fighter could put himself anywhere between, for a 10 or 14 week camp. What that takes out of them, the dieting, the 2 or 3 sessions a day, takes a lot out of them. So on the night, it doesn't matter if it goes 1 round or 12 rounds, they've still experienced that camp and they do need to rest. The good thing about Froch is when he does rest, he might put on 5 or 6 pounds. He's still running, he's still ticking over. And that's something young fighters should really take note of, because too many fighters finish their fight, think they're not out for 3 or 4 months, go and have 2 or 3 weeks off, put on 1.5 stone, balloon, get out of shape, and then it just becomes a lot harder when they go back in camp. And I think if you want longevity in your career, you have to live, you know, like someone like Froch, and that's why you see at 35 years old, I really think he's coming into his prime.
So, I mean, obviously, Froch Butte was one of the most memorable nights in British boxing, you know, as I can remember. Atmosphere was absolutely electric, and you know, a lot of people tipped Butte to beat Froch. You know, he was unbeaten, but you know, he hadn't fought out of Canada, coming over here, 10,000 Nottingham fans, hardcore Nottingham fans, and he just absolutely pulled it out of the bag to destroy him, didn't he? So that must rank amongst one of the greatest nights of, you know, MATCHROOM Sports boxing time.
Yeah, I mean, my old man had some great nights. You know, Eubank Ben won, probably up there with the very best of them when Eubank stopped Ben to win the world title. That was a classic. The Froch Butte fight was great for so many different reasons. When he lost to Andre Ward, forget who was right, who wasn't right, who was, you know, he lost, and he lost comfortably. It's very difficult when you're in the change room with a fighter after that to sort of try and pick them up, and especially when they're at that level. You know, for me as a promoter, what right have I got to say to someone like Froch, who's been around the game for years and years at the very top level, don't worry, son, everything will be all right. You know, you say it, but really he knows that he wants his world title back. When you're a world champion and you lose it, you want it back. And when we looked at the options and who to fight, you know, Lucien Butte, they wanted us to go to Montreal, but I really felt that one of the reasons that Carl wasn't firing against Ward is because he was tired of being on the road, you know, and he was tired of consistently fighting away from home without the cheers of the home fans to lift you. And he was just a little bit down. And I said to him, whatever happens, your next fight will be in Nottingham. You know, and we looked at, you know, just potentially having a 12-rounder for an intercontinental belt or an interim belt. And then the Butte offer come up to fight in Canada, and I just said to him, no. You know, time and time again, they offered huge money. And I sort of chipped away the thought of getting them to the UK, and they felt so confident because of the Ward fight. And, you know, they've boxed so many times in Canada, won so easily so many times. Butte was tipped as one of the best super middleweights in the world. Froch was coming off a disappointing loss. They just felt that they could do it. And I said in an interview before, it was kind of like, you know, there's a girl who's chasing you, you know, and you just keep rejecting, and then in the end, you know, everything works out. And that's really what happened, you know, to Butte. It was weird that we got him over in that kind of fight. And, you know, Carl didn't make as much money as probably he would have liked for a fight of that magnitude, but that's why it was a gamble. You know, it was a gamble because you lose to Butte, potentially your career's over. But that's the kind of guy Carl Froch is. You know, we sat down, we looked at the alternatives, and it was, look, you can have an easy fight, make a nice few quid here, or you can fight for the world title again against Bute. We believe you can beat him. You believe you can beat him. You're in your hometown. You're virtually unbeatable in your hometown. But, you know, if you lose, it could be all over. And that's why you saw the intensity of the performance from Carl Froch. That's why you saw me go mental in the ring, because it meant so much, because it was a gamble. You know, and people don't really realise that, but it really was a gamble for Carl Froch's career. But I said to him, the upside of that gamble is so big. You know, if you can win that, beat Bute live on Sky in front of your home fans and become a three-time champion of the world really is your oyster from there. And there's still so many big fights in the super middleweight division. And it was just an amazing night. And also Bute had about 1,000 fans there, Romanian Canadians, so that helped with the banter from everyone. But, you know, I'll never forget that night. You know, I've said before in a few interviews, when you walk down a corridor with a fighter and you can hear, you know, who are you, and they're singing that to Bute as he's walking out. And then as you open the doors and the crowd see him, that feeling, I mean, you know, my old man's always said to me, if you can get 1% of the adrenaline that a fighter gets, you know, you'll really enjoy yourself. And I think that night I must have had 30 or 40 because I was absolutely buzzing. Standing at the bottom of that ramp, seeing Carl Froch on that stage, finally getting the recognition, you know, and the adulation that he really deserves, made me very proud. And you don't forget nights like that. And I'm pleased to be a part of it because I think everyone in that arena will remember that night for the rest of their lives.
We'll come on to future plans of Carl Froch in a little bit. Moving on to Kell Brook. Kell Brook's had 3 fights this year. Started off with Matthew Hatton, the battle of the British welterweights, and you know, people were saying they didn't know which one was the top one at the time between Matthew Hatton and Kell Brook, and you know, he outclassed Matthew Hatton, who's, you know, a very solid, you know, and consistent fighter. He's had a lot of fights, a lot more fights than Kell Brook, but he showed his class in that fight.
He did, but one thing we found out about Kell Brook is he hasn't been doing things right, you know, and that's not necessarily a direct fault of himself. He just didn't really know how to do things right. And what I mean by that is he didn't know how to prepare himself to be at the very top level. You know, he knew how to prepare himself to be a British, European champion, but in order to go on and be a world-class fighter, you need to prepare like a world-class fighter. And the Carson Jones fight really exposed that. You know, it was such a brilliant fight, but no disrespect to Carson Jones, but Kell battered him for 5 or 6 rounds, and he should be getting those guys out there in 6, 7, 8 rounds. But then all of a sudden, he totally run out of gas, and it was just the most nail-biting drama unfolding in front of me, just pleading with myself, just hold on, please. You know, he'd already won the first 6 or 7 rounds. He came back to win, I think, 9 and 11. Just a brilliant fight. The Hatton fight, you know, atmospherically was incredible. You know, the War of the Roses, it was a perfect promotion, if you like. We had 10,000 in Sheffield Arena. You know, a guy who no one told me, you know, they told me Kell Brook couldn't sell tickets. What people have got to realise with Kell Brook is the journey. You know, I get so many fighters say to me, could you do with me what you did with Kell Brook? It doesn't always work like that. I mean, he's got phenomenal talent. But we took a guy who really, I don't think, had boxed from his hometown since he was the age of 18. Hillsborough Leisure Centre, sold it out. Ponds Forge, sold it out. 1,300, 1,700 capacity. Then we take the punt for the arena versus Hatton. And when you go on sale and you phone up that box office after the first day and they tell you you've done 3,000 tickets, it's just, you know, it's hard to keep it in your pants, to be honest with you, because it's just a case of this is going to work, you know. And that was the perfect fight at the perfect time for Kell Brook. And you know, we've now looked after Kell Brook for 15, 16 months. You know, I think he's had 6 fights. He's filled the arena 3 times. He's been to America to box. He's been on an incredible journey. And now he's got an opportunity as a mandatory challenger to become a world champion. A really tough fight in Devon Alexander, but you know, it's time. And people said to me, oh, you won't stick him in with Alexander. Oh, you won't. Yeah, of course we will. This is what we've been building up to do. You know, you have those big nights in the arenas to feel the occasion, to feel the pressure, to feel the crowd, and to get yourself ready for tests like Alexander. When we went to America and we boxed on a Froch Ward undercard, same kind of thing. You know, I said to him, go out there, experience the time zone, experience being in a different changing room where you don't know anyone, different commissions, different drug testing people, you know, all kinds of different things that you've got to take in. He's taking that in now. So now when he goes back to fight Devon Alexander, he'll be ready. And he's got it in his hands. You know, I believe he's got the ability to win. Alexander's a great fighter, 25 years of age. Kell Brook's 26, 29-0. It's just a brilliant fight, you know, and he's got a chance to go and just become a megastar. Because he wins that fight, I mean, boy's going to make some serious money.
Moving on to Darren Barker, a very frustrating year for Darren Barker, but it ended on a high last week, or the week before rather, against Kerry Open. He proves in that middleweight division that, you know, he's still there. Yeah,
it's a funny old game, isn't it? Because, you know, with Darren, we went out and we took the fight against Sergio Martinez, which people have got to understand about that kind of fight and decision to take that. Darren felt he could beat Sergio Martinez. We all did. But we all knew that he would give him a great, great fight. And when there's a huge purse like that involved and an opportunity to expose yourself on HBO, you have to take it. And unfortunately for Darren, if he would have stayed fit after that, no fault of his own, he would have been fighting in America, he would have had another world title chance because he did so well against Martinez. So losing a fight like that is never the end of your career. And fighters have got to understand that. What was disappointing from there was he had another hip operation, and then finally he got himself back to fight Ruotolo at Ali Pali on September the 9th. Got himself in incredible shape, and I think that his last spar, threw a right hand, got an elbow on the bicep, tore his bicep muscle, and that was it. You know, Darren's been through a lot in his life, and he's emotionally very up and down. Probably one of the nicest blokes you'll ever meet. And, you know, I remember we had our press day here, just after he pulled out the fight, and he said, that's it for me, you know, I'm done. And I just asked him, just be selfish, you know, be selfish and look at it just purely financially, you know, for your family. You've got a chance here to go on and make big money boxing. And he just said, I don't care. He said, I've just had it. He said, I keep getting myself up, 12 weeks in camp, prepare myself to the best level, and then I break down. I can't handle it anymore. You know, he needed 2 or 3 weeks and people around him to say, you've got so much talent, because he really has. You know, and no disrespect to the others, McCloskey and Murray, I really feel that he's the most talented of the three. Now, that doesn't always mean that he'd win those fights, but I really think he's got the most natural talent and ability. And I think now, at 30 years of age, you're going to see him come true. You're going to see his man's strength come out. And he's fighting for his family now. You know, he's got a young daughter. And I just think he's changed in the last 2 years, and his goals in life have changed. And I think when you change like that and you have other things in your life to fight for, I think you're more difficult to beat in the ring. And, you know, the fight against Kerry Hope was a really, really good performance for someone who had been out for 14 months, you know, to dispose of Kerry Hope like that. And Kerry Hope been training with Gary Lockett, been looking really well. You know, I know he's not a world-level operator, but he's a decent operator in a tough comeback fight, and he just dealt with him easily. I think Darren's punching harder. I think he wants it more. I think he's faster. And I think he's got that desire back. And the middleweight division is such a brilliant division in the UK. You know, you've got the likes of the 3 top guys there, Barker, Macklin and Murray. Murray fighting Martinez. Macklin, I think he's out with it, going to have a hand operation, but he could come back and face Barker. And then you've got that level down. Billy Joe Saunders, John Ryder, you know, those kind of levels. Even Chris Eubank Jr., you know, those kind of guys. Just a really, really good division. And there's a few of them, you know, divisions like that in Britain at the moment. I just think somehow we need to get it all together so they can fight each other. But of course, you know, you can't just put those fighters in with each other when there isn't, you know, the marbles at stake. Really, we want one of them to get a world title. But Barker, Macklin or Murray could win a world title, that could really set something off. And I think one of them will. You know, I think you just got to hang around, you got to keep grafting, keep grinding. And I really feel one of those 3 will win a world title, and hopefully it can be Darren Barker.
Moving on to Gavin Reese, I still always find that Gavin Reese doesn't always get the credit he deserves. I find him, in some people's eyes, he's a very underrated fighter. I mean, this is a former world champion after all, and you're looking to get him that world title another world title shot for next year.
Yeah, Gavin Reese is old school. You know, he just wants to fight and he just wants to earn money. You know, every fighter's got different demands and different needs and different aspirations and goals. And as a manager, well, as a promoter, you need to sit down and really find out what each fighter wants. Gavin Reese is very easy. He wants to fight and he wants to make money. You know, of course he wants to win world titles, but you know, others have got these aspirations and dreams to be a champion and go forth, and so has Gavin. But he wants to get out there and fight, try and win titles, but make as much money as possible for his family. And I love that about Gavin Reese, because you know exactly where you stand. You know, and he loves to have a war, he loves to have a tear up, and he's a hugely underrated fighter in my mind. You know, I think he'd give Ricky Burns a hell of a fight. I think he's proved himself in the UK to be the #2 lightweight already. You know, you can't take anything away from Ricky Burns. He's a tremendous fighter. He's come on leaps and bounds, and we really need to see him have a test now. But, you know, we're in a situation with Gavin Reese where we're #2 in the rankings after Abril for the WBA title. So we're pushing them. He has to get that shot legally. You know, it's a vacant title. So we're making sure we apply the pressure on the WBA. I actually spoke to HBO the other day about, you know, and they asked the question if he'd be around to fight Broner, you know, in February next year, because they don't think the Ricky Burns fight will happen, or you know, a lot of people don't. So would Reese be available? And I said, absolutely. So, you know, if I asked Gavin Reese, I mean, you know, as tough a fight that is, you know, Gavin's the kind of guy that's going to give Broner a hell of a fight. You know, and if you give him a hell of a fight on HBO and it's a great fight, you're going to set yourself up for another fight on HBO or another shot at a world title. And what's Gavin got to lose? Absolutely nothing. He's been a world champion already. You know, he could have a huge payday against Broner. And I said to HBO, listen, we'd be up for the Broner fight. But, you know, if things are fair, and many times it's not in boxing, he should get a shot at the WBA title against Abril, hopefully in February or March. So, a great fighter, Gavin. I really like him, you know, because again, you know exactly where you stand, and psychologically he's very sound because he knows exactly what he wants. Let me fight and pay me, and that's all he wants.
Someone who's turned their career around, but after a shock loss to Colin Lyons, Lee Purdy has come back with an absolute bang, hasn't he? And he's got to be knocking on the door for a title. A world title surely next year if he carries on progressing the way he is.
Again, Lee Purdy, hugely underrated fighter. You've got to look at someone like Lee Purdy's pedigree. You know, all these young guys that we're signing, they've boxed over 100 amateur bouts. They've boxed all around the world, huge amounts of experience. I think Lee Purdy had less than 10 amateur fights. You know, he's done some unlicensed stuff, but Tony Sims has really taken him on and turned him into a real decent fighter, but a decent boxer as well, getting better, head movements improving, he's thinking a lot more. You know, and the night against Colin Lyons really taught him that you just can't just bowl out there and just knock people out every time you fight. It doesn't work like that. And stylistically, if you match Lee Purdy right, I don't think there's many people in the welterweight division who could hold their own with him from a strength and a punch power perspective. You know, and again, I'm saying there's plenty of welterweights out there at the moment that could beat him. But stylistically, if you match him right, you know, and that's why I was disappointed with the Carson Jones fight, because I think that would have been such a great fight. But you know, Lee's already in the top 10 in the IBF. He's the IBF international champion. He's turned his career around from, you know, he was boxing on the undercard for English titles against Adnan Amar in March. Now all of a sudden he's looking at progressing up to the top 5 in the IBF. You know, he had that great win against the Argentina Carrasco at Ali Pali, brilliant fight. I was just gutted for him that he got sick before that, you know, because again, you talk about camps and how heartbreaking it is. These people, you know, he'd done 11 weeks, grafting 2-3 times a day, preparing him for that fight. You know, and when it falls through, it's heartbreaking, you know, it's for the whole team. But Purdy's going to come on, he's going to box again in March. I'd like to make the rematch with Denton Vassell. I think it's a brilliant fight. It was a great fight first time round. I think Purdy's improved a hell of a lot, and Vassell looked really good against Heffron. So I think that's a great fight. Hopefully we can get that made for March.
Do you think that Lee Purdy is capable of winning a world title while he's with you?
It's difficult to say how far anyone can go when they keep on improving. You know, and someone said to me the other day, they asked me about Brian Rose, and they said, how far do you think he can go? And I said, well, it's difficult to say because he's always improving. So when are they going to stop improving? You don't know how much improvement Lee Purdy's got in him. I think that if you can match him right, he can win a world title. I really do. You know, there's fighters out there. I mean, Devon Alexander's an example. He boxed Lee Purdy's head off at the moment. But, you know, someone who doesn't, someone who comes to fight, someone who's strong and tough, you know, he would give them all kinds of trouble. But he's still learning. World titles are much too early to talk about for Lee Purdy. Let's get him the right fights. Let's keep him learning. And but again, just a great. I love Lee Purdy. You know, he's tough as old boots. You know exactly what he wants. And he's someone who loves to fight, you know. And the money, of course, is always important, but, you know, he's more in it for the fighting. He's a fighting man, you know, and I've got a lot of time for him.
Moving on to the Eagle, Erik Skoglund. I mean, he's in that light middleweight category, and, you know, would he be ready for someone like Brian Rose? I
think so. You know, his last fight was a little bit disappointing against Max Maxwell, who's difficult to work out, and a big light middleweight on fight night. I thought he was a little bit flat on the night, and he actually, after the fight, come down with a little bit of a cold, and I thought that might be the reason for it. But I think what happens is people can get stale if you don't move them on. You know, and you look at someone like Ocheng, and he has gone, I think that was his third defence of his English title, so he's ready to step up now and move on. I'd be up for him fighting Liam Smith, be up for him fighting Brian Rose, any of those guys, because I think he's ready now. You know, he's done his apprenticeship, and I think he's ready to be slung into a proper fight, and then find out how good he is. You know, he's always improving. But again, the thing with Erik is he'll fight any of those on the road. It doesn't matter. You know, you look at the early part of his career, he was getting slung into all kinds of fights. You know, Sheffield, Manchester, London, against people who you know, Liam Cameron, he boxed at an early age, he beat him. So he's up for going anywhere, really, and that's another thing I like about Erik. But you know, he's a character. I like Erik. You know, he's had a checkered past, but he's turned his life around, and he's a nice guy. Nice guy, deserves a lot out of boxing, and hopefully we can make sure he makes a good living.
A word on your up and coming prospects at MATCHROOM Sport, Kell Brook, Scotty Cardle, Martin Ward. Obviously, Kell Brook seems the one that's sort of everyone's talking about at the moment. I mean, he's taking guys out at will, you know, early rounds. So you must be really excited to see what he's going to bring.
Yeah, I'm excited with all of them. You know, with the FI, he's in a division where you can progress very quickly, and we're doing that with him. But all the guys, you know, they're such huge talents. And I go back about pedigree. You know, these guys have boxed, like I say, over 100 amateur bouts all over the world. You know, Cardle, Callum Smith, Yafai, Ward. But what I love about them really is they're all 20, 21, 22, 23. They've got so much time. And with us giving them the opportunity to box 7, 8, 9 times a year, they're going to learn so quickly. And I want to give these guys the best opportunities in their career possible. And I'm going to do that, and we are doing that. And, you know, you look at someone like Yafai, who's 6-0 now in 5 months, 5 knockouts. He's going to really go on. And I said when he started, I believe he'd be a world champion by the time he's 25, and I do. You know, some of them will take a little bit longer. Martin Ward, he's only 21. He's had, I think, 4 fights now. He'll progress again next year, probably have another 7 or 8 fights. He's still learning. Cardle, in my opinion, is ready now for that next step up. I think that's a Central Area title fight, and probably move on to a British title fight at the end of the year. And Callum Smith's just 2-0 now, but a real talent. Did plenty of rounds with Froch in sparring for the Yusuf Mack fight. And there's going to be more. You know, there's going to be more signings coming to MATCHROOM. And I want to develop a team that over the next few years is just, you know, really, really powerful. And I want to sign up all the new wave fighters that I believe are going to be domestic and world champions. And I think I've got 4 guys there who will certainly all win British titles, and I believe many of them can go on and challenge for world honours.
Tony Bellew, he's getting himself into a position where, you know, he's hopefully going to become mandatory challenger. Can you tell us the situation with this? Obviously, we know that his next fight could be for a final eliminator, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting scenario there in the light heavyweight division with the WBC. So obviously he beat Bellew, which he started like a train and probably got one of the worst cuts I've ever seen in boxing. Boxed clever to get through the fight, but he's going to need a little bit of time off, looking at March back at the Echo Arena. In the WBC division, he's now number 3. Number 1 is Bernard Hopkins, who they're talking about fighting Tavoris Cloud in March for the IBF title. That looks like it's a done deal. So take him out of the equation. Then you've got Gutnecht, who's, I believe, going to fight Bramer for the WBO interim title or something like that. Take him out. So Tony's actually really going to end up being number 1 challenger in the WBC division. Now, of course, Jean Pascal just did his shoulder at the weekend. He was due to fight Dawson in March. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Bellew get an offer to fight Dawson, or even their guys, Gary Shaw, talk about coming over here to fight him in March. I'd like Tony to have one more fight before he challenges for that world title. And I would think the WBC will make a decision over the next couple of weeks to run a final eliminator. And looking at the rankings, it will probably be between someone like Isaac Shalamba or Denis Grachev or someone like that. But that's fine. Whoever it's against, you've got to take, because to get that mandatory challenger spot is so powerful. I know I always harp on about it with Kell Brook, but you know, to get a world title fight with no options and a real chance to become a champion and control your own career and your own destiny, it's like gold dust. It's like Kell. You know, Kell beats Devon Alexander, and I've drummed this into his head 100 times. You have become a world champion. You have your own destiny in your hands. No options. No promoters telling you what to do. You're now the superstar. You can go out. I mean, just... Of course, you want the world champions, but the money involved, no, it's life-changing money for Kell Brook, you know. And all these guys, I want to see them when they pack up the game, sitting there in their nice big houses with their nice cars and their nice holiday. And I want them to look back and I want them to go, God, great career, you know, and thanks, Eddie, for everything, because we really set up our lives here, didn't we, you know. And they deserve it, because if they put their life and soul into this sport, they should get rewards. And not everyone will. Life doesn't work like that. But I want to make sure that our guys, you know, financially look back at the end of their careers and go, oh, did well, you know, and I've got all this now and I'm really comfortable, and thank you to boxing, because, you know, it rewarded me with the good things in life. And someone like Kell Brook and Bellew, who are on the verge of that mandatory position, have got an opportunity to grab it and really set themselves up for life and go on to really make a statement in the game, and, you know, and become a great British fighter.
Carl Frampton, obviously, going to face the unfinished business with Kiko Martinez next year. But, I mean, Carl Frampton's come on as well, hasn't he? He's really taken note in that division. And obviously everyone's, after Scott Quigg's impressive display over Rendell Monroe, are going to be looking for that fight next year. You know, can you work with the Hattons to get that done? Yeah,
I can work with anyone. You know, I spoke to Richard Poxon. I made them 3 offers, and the final one was over 6 figures, which is just a huge amount of money for a fight like that in that division. And they don't want it, and now it's gone to purse bids. So purse bids is a little bit disappointing, because sometimes people will make purse bids that have no intention of staging the fight. So of course we'll be bidding for that. Will we win? Maybe, maybe not. Someone may come in with a silly offer to just, you know, kibosh the situation. But we're open to chatting with the Hattons at any time. You know, and people have got to understand, I'll work with any promoter. I don't care. You know, I've got an obligation to fill a certain amount of dates with Sky. If it means working with other promoters, great. I've worked with Steve Wood, I've worked with Dave Caldwell, and I'm up for working with Hattons. You know, I reached out to Maloney, made him a huge offer for David Price to work with Sky and us, you know, on one of our dates, and they chose not to. But that's okay. Not everyone will want to work with us, but I think we've got a great vehicle there. We've got a great partner. And you look at someone like Carl Frampton, he's moving along as one of our other superstars. He's got a real tough fight in Martinez. Great fight stylistically. Martinez is out in LA with Sergio Martinez's team, taking things really seriously. Selby Lindsay on that bill as well, be a great night. But Frampton is a little superstar out there. You know, anyone can sell 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 tickets in arenas. You know, he's really got huge potential. And I just think that a Quigg Frampton fight in Belfast, you know, it could do 20,000 tickets. You know, I just feel that over here, it would do 4,000 or 5,000 tickets. You know. So that's where I think it should be, and we'll have to see what happens. But I just think that, you know, those two are at a level now where really they should fight each other, and the winner moves on to fight for a world title. Because if that fight's made, the loser is not good enough to win a world title, in my opinion, because it's such a tough division. So, you know, they'll find out the levels and where they're at, and of course we back our man, you know, all day long. But what a great fight it'd be for British boxing, and you know, it's disappointing. Some fights will never get made, and Price Fury may never get made, and Frampton against Quigg may never get made, Barker against Macklin may never get made. But there's a lot of reasons behind that, not just whether people want to fight, not just politics. Timing is important, you know, and what's right for the fighters. Sometimes it's just not right for the fighter to take that fight because of other options. But you know, as a fan of the sport and understanding what fans want, you know, it's difficult to try and explain why these fights can't happen. But that's just boxing. It's happened for years and years and years, and it'll happen for years and years more. Sometimes the fights we all want don't get made.
Just a word on Paul McCloskey. What sort of year do you think he's had?
Yeah, difficult year. You know, obviously had the loss on the prize fighter show. And that was tough to swallow, because obviously, and again, we talk about going stale. He's just bubbling around for that world title shot before he lost to DeMarcus Corley. And when you're having that kind of fight with nothing really to gain, it's tough to get yourself up for it. I think that's one of the reasons he lost that fight. But he had a good win out last time. You know, we might try and slip him in for the WBA interim title, but I think he's just bubbling for a shot. They asked, Golden Boy asked me if he would fight Lucas Mathis. You know, a real tough fight, but that was much too early for him. I think they were talking about January 19th. He may not be ready to come back in February. He's just had a bit of work done on one of his eyes, so I think March might be back for McCloskey. But I think he's still got a lot to give, particularly you know, in big sort of domestic fights, but for, you know, the bigger belts and the bigger titles. But you know, he's still got plenty to give. Changed trainers, so he'll probably be a lot fresher now. And again, you know, I think he's had a decent year with a good win in September, but tough times when he lost to DeMarcus Corley.
Bit of a tough year for Ryan Aston as well. Come back next year though, can't he?
Yeah, really strange. You know, he looked so good and so confident. Sparred plenty of rounds with Froch for the Butte fight, and Carl said to me, this guy's going to be a real great fighter. Went in with Curtis Valentine, which was a tough fight for the Central area, a Midlands area title, and just chose to trade with him. And what you don't do is you don't trade with Curtis Valentine in the first couple of rounds. You know, he should have boxed his ear holes off that night, but he didn't. It was a bad loss, you know, because it was a bad stoppage. And he came back, you know, recently and had a technical draw. But it's difficult confidence-wise when you have a loss like that to overcome it and come back. And that's something you've got to work on mentally, to go back in the ring and be as confident as you were before when you were winning and everyone thought you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. And now he's going in thinking people are talking about when I last got stopped. You know, but he's a huge talent, and I'm sure he'll overcome that, and we'll make sure he gets the opportunities to do so. But in his last fight, he didn't have the swagger that he had when he was 7-0, and everyone's saying he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It was more, you know, worried about shipping a right hand or what was happening. Because again, you've gone from not even contemplating a loss to, if I lose this one, my career's over. All kinds of different pressures, and that's what's so great about boxing. Is that, you know, you're going in to sometimes save your career, you're going in to try and make your career, you're going in there just for you know, to learn. There's so many reasons, you know, behind a fighter going into the ring, and that's what's fascinating about it. But the pressure of having that, if I lose here, it's all over, is something that's really difficult to deal with. And he's only a young guy, and it's going to take him a little bit of time to get that confidence and that swagger back.
And just finally, the Avenger Brothers. Obviously, Chris frustrated for that rematch with Darren Cassius Connor. Just a word about them. How do you think they've been going?
Yeah, good. I like it. You know, the Avenger is a great self-publicist. They sell a lot of tickets. They're learning. Chris, you know, the fight with Chris and Danny Connor was a brilliant fight. I thought Chris won the fight, but I told him after, I thought you were lazy at times, and if the referee was looking for an excuse to give it to Danny Connor, you let him have that excuse. And I've got to say, Danny Connor is one of the nicest blokes in boxing. He's relentless with me. He's tweeting me non-stop. I think you should put this guy in prize fight. What about this guy? What about trying this? What, you know? But I like him because he's always thinking, you know, and he's not the greatest fighter in the world, but he is improving, you know, and he does give everything to the sport. And he's a lovely bloke, Danny. I've got a lot of time for him, and Chris too. And I'm really looking forward to that rematch. It'll be in March, probably March the 9th at Wembley. And it'll be a great fight again, because both guys have got big desires. And, you know, even a Southern area title can mean so much to people and to fighters. And looking back, I think those belts, you know, particularly the Southern area belt, is a belt that's steeped in history. And if I was a fighter from London, a Southern area belt would mean a lot for me, because some great fighters have won that over the years, and it really is a stepping stone to move up to English and their British title honours. But, you know, great people. It's a great thing about boxing. So many great people in the sport. You've been in it a short period of time. You've met some great people. You've got a lot of people you consider mates. You know, there's a lot of good guys in boxing, and Danny Connor is one of them. Of course, the Evangelos as well. Looking forward to the rematch.